Okay, we're doing it. Megalopolis, a fable, the latest by famed director Francis Ford Coppola that has a lot of audience split as to whether or not this is a work of genius, misunderstood, unintentionally hilarious, mid, or a steaming pile of trash with little of interest to offer in a year with some of the strongest voices in cinema. One guess where I'm falling on the review scale. Now off the bat, I don't have a lot of love for Coppola as an individual. He made excuses for horrendous crimes, then funded the perpetrators' future projects, which I won't go into detail on because it would probably get this video demonetized. But the man has multiple movies that have become staples of cinema, like The Godfather and Apocalypse Now. But he also has a lot of confounding movies, and Megalopolis definitely feels like it should say from the director and writer of Twixt versus the director of The Godfather. Now, I'm not being dramatic when I say that this movie is one of the worst theater experiences I have ever had. I have not felt that trapped in a theater since Cats. And much like Cats, I sat my way through the entire movie in hopes that maybe I could make a little bit of money for my suffering, except unlike Cats that I saw for free, I paid $100 for my Megalopolis ticket. After all the really bad reviews started coming out of Cannes, they did not have a press screening for Megalopolis at TIFF, which is almost entirely unheard of. It's like they knew what most of us were going to say, and we're like, you know what, we're going to make you pay or wait for the privilege to on this movie. Though also, like Cats, I do think there's an environment where this movie could be a pretty good time. And that's with a group of people who are equally as jazzed to just treat it like an interactive experience and yell when you feel the need to. I, on the other hand, saw it at a premiere screening at a film festival where people treated it as a proper event, you know? They were dressed to the nines, wined and dined, expecting to see, I'm not quite sure what, but the confusion in the air was palpable. But even I, who had tracked the reviews out of Cannes, knew it was polarizing, knew a lot of people were hating it. I could not have been prepared for what my brain did while watching this movie. It just all feels like a series of disconnected scenes in the same universe, and at one point it literally felt like my brain was trying to power itself off, which would have been a lot easier with today's sponsor, Raycon. I could have just popped them in and drifted off into any world I wanted, which will never be Megalopolis. Raycon is back with some Black Friday deals for you to take advantage of on your own pair of everyday earbuds, or maybe if you're looking to get a little head start on some holiday shopping. Because right now they are offering up to 30% off site-wide. And if you hadn't heard, their staple everyday earbuds have recently gotten an upgrade. On top of the usual specs like 32-hour battery life, optimized gel tips in a variety of sizes to fit any ear, fun new colors like they have a watermelon Jolly Rancher edition right now that is so cute. They now have active noise cancellation so you can choose how you experience your music from fully locked into awareness mode, a quick charge feature where 10 minutes of charge time gets you 90 minutes of battery life for that long commute or gym trip, multi-point connectivity to switch seamlessly between devices, and IP66 sweat and water resistance. Raycon are my go-to when trying to sleep in noisy environments like planes, locking in on a workout, and awareness mode is great when I'm out running errands. So if you want to try out Raycon for yourself, make sure to click the link in the description down below or go to buyraycon.com/Jedi to get up to 30% off site-wide. Now I know that seemed like a fake ad read setup, but no, at one point my brain literally felt like it was trying to power off because it just couldn't deal with so much of what it was being subjected to. And a lot of people might think I'm exaggerating. My friend Chase thought I was exaggerating, and then he went to see it and he couldn't make it through the whole thing because he started having a panic attack and had to leave. Like, I didn't even stay for the Q&A where I at least would have heard some interesting tidbits from actors I enjoy listening to speak, because I just had to be so far away from there as fast as possible. Like, the magic of cinema was truly bringing people together in a joint mission to get as far away from the theater as possible. I had multiple conversations with people walking out being like, what the fuck was that and how can I find the nearest alcohol? It's just such a confounding blend of like incredibly boring and then overly chaotic that it was just screaming in here. And as serious as so many people are taking it, a lot of this just feels like a joke. Like, the marketing added to the comedy of the situation where some idiot at a PR firm used an AI program to pull bad reviews from other Coppola movies that occasionally ended up as classics. So it would be like this: see, you may be witnessing a flood of terrible reviews right now, but time will be the judge of Megalopolis. They were wrong about The Godfather too. Like, The Godfather as well. Only to find out that those blurbs were either entirely fake or from completely different movie reviews. Like, come on, there wasn't any significant hate towards The Godfather when it released. Be serious. So that, on top of the like failed at-home Amazon Prime thing where audiences would be able to ask Adam Driver's character a question because it was going to be too much money and probably just a ton of people being like, Mr. Catalina, what the actual fuck? If that seems confusing to you, it means you probably hadn't heard of the fifth wall break scenario where someone someone like walks out onto the stage, if you saw it at a festival or at a premium screening, and like pantomimes asking a question for the audio in the movie, and like Adam Driver like shrinks down on the stage to answer directly to it. I still don't fully know if that was supposed to be like a callback to like the silent film era where there was kind of some like interactive live aspects to it, or if he really thought he was doing something really novel there with the full fifth wall break. But I do know that it didn't deliver. I feel like there's a world where that could have been really cool, and maybe if I didn't know about it beforehand, but I still kind of thought it was a joke when I was walking into that screening. And there was like multiple times that I was going to walk out, but then I kept being like, no, I have to wait and see if someone comes out on stage. And they did, and it was lame. Then on top of the in-movie stuff, there were some accounts that some stuff happened with some extras during filming, some different allegations, like the whole thing is a mess. But again, none more messy than the movie itself. Loosely, this is the story of a man trying to progress society as the powers that be try to maintain the status quo, one looking to create a utopia, the other looking to push harder into special interests and greed, whether it's because he actually thinks it's going to make a difference, or if it's just trying to tread water until hopefully something fixes things. But ultimately, they both fail in ideology and execution, with the movie clearly telling us which one it thinks is better. Yes, so much of this is supposed to be satire, but it's also very much a fable, a message for the future, and it's constantly at odds with those two sides, and the fable side is just as laughable. Really just kind of feels like a lot of self-wankage. Before I really get into it, let me just say, like, I really do understand what the man was going for, the critique of modern America, what he was reckoning with inside himself and his own creative process, and the care he potentially has for the world and cinema at large. But that doesn't make it good. We don't have to give accolades to him because we think he earned it. Now, I know that some people unironically really enjoyed this. They felt what he was trying to express. They saw the magic happen on that screen, and I think that's great. These critiques are not addressed at you. I wish I had had that experience because we all see magic in different places. This is directed to some of the people I've spoken to and some of the reviews I've seen who haven't said anything positive about the movie, whether or not it's actually doing the thing it's setting out to well, if they've enjoyed anything about it, objectively or subjectively, but they're still out there giving it like 4+ stars out of 5 just because of who made it, just because of how long it took him to make it and how hard he seems to have worked on it. Like, I'm sorry, if we're just handing out 4-star reviews for people working hard, so many more movies should be 4 stars because movies are really hard to make. I think it's totally fine to say you appreciate what it was going for, what it was supposed to be, but if you can't tell me why it was actually a good vessel of any of those themes, messages, or intention, I don't think Coppola needs the sympathy prize, guys. He'll get over it, and he's happy with what he made. That's all that really matters at the end of the day. He funded this thing himself. He got exactly what he wanted. He was able to change his mind on a whim, which we've heard he did. And I'll clarify, if you're happy it exists for all those aforementioned reasons, that's totally okay, but that is different than the movie being good. Again, that is not directed at the people who actually did like it. For the people who like it for all the reasons that I really don't like it, I think that rocks that you enjoyed it. I am genuinely happy for you. This is just directed at like specific people that I was reading things and I'm like, but did you enjoy it? Did you like it? Do you think it did a good job at doing all the things you're saying it did? This is like if Neil Breen or Tommy Wiseau had an exorbitant budget, but like without the quirky charm or confusing lore either of them bring to the table. So what is this thing other than a lot? Adam Driver is Cesar Catalina, some quirky neo-type Nepo baby, head of the design authority that wants to push society forward with the creation of Megalopolis, an advanced society made with material he founded called Megalon. Yeah, I thought we taught the world this lesson with unobtainium. But he has planned this utopia obsessively after the loss of his wife or her disappearance, of which he was tried but ultimately acquitted in the murder of. And as is the way, some of the powers that be are trying to stop this utopia from being made to keep the status quo society of the rich getting richer and more money just getting pumped into things. With a little bit of extra spice, the mayor who's specifically against the creation of Megalopolis, Franklin Cicero, was the district attorney in the case against Catalina, who still very much believes that Caesar murdered his wife. And also, just going back to that Neo statement really quick, his assistant / driver and just overall narrator of the movie, like the historian of the whole thing, is played by Lawrence Fishburne, who was literally Morpheus in The Matrix. Kind of feels like the man saw The Matrix and was like, I'm gonna do that, but worse.
Who's it? Time, stop!
Because Cesar man also just stop time, which is kind of what it felt like watching this movie. It's like time stopped. The time stop is mentioned to be more of a metaphor for art, how an artist can capture a moment forever, and the people who can do it in this movie have a greater appreciation for that vision of the future. Again, just really feeling the heavy self-insert for Coppola's own place in society and wondering if art and ideas can prevent all these things building in America, and honestly probably his own thoughts on time and how much he has left. So as you might be able to tell just with that brief little introduction, this movie is just trying to give us entirely too much information on the present and past at once. It just becomes this overstuffed nightmare, but it's also delivering each of those aspects in the most convoluted way possible. Because at face value, pointing out that people who have a lot of money will always have more political sway until it gets to the point that they're not even hiding it anymore and ending up in positions they have no business being in. It's the delivery style that sucks. But this story is taking place in a future New York, which is now New Rome, and with that and the names and from Francis's own mouth, Megalopolis ended up being a partial what-if situation around the Catilinarian Conspiracy, which was a plot by Catiline to overthrow Cicero in 63 BC and take control of the state after he lost the consular elections. But seeing as history is so often written by the victors, historians have opposing views as to how true these accounts are, how biased they may have been against Catiline, who was potentially most interested in ensuring the progression of their society. So originally, decades ago, Coppola was writing it from that original historical perspective, and there's definitely still some lingering aspects with Shia LaBeouf's character Claudio incensing the general public against Megalopolis as a means to achieve his own selfish ends, but also clearly a representation of a Roman politician of the same name. Wow, it's like history repeats itself. Rich people use manipulation to make more money. But now this movie is also engaging with the idea that Catiline was truly trying to change things for the better of society to prevent the collapse of that Roman era that came to be, and then using that to parallel a potential collapse in modern America if things keep progressing the way they are. Really interesting premise. I just don't think he did it well. It kind of plays out like a Wikipedia article brought to screen by something that doesn't understand how humans act. And another issue is that Cesar is also part of the rich elite in this movie, but he has sympathies for the struggle of us normies and is essentially being presented as our misunderstood and tortured savior, working to help society despite the setbacks and how people are manipulated against it. But Francis, I just don't think the problems of society are going to be solved by an individual. So on a fundamental level, I feel this movie fails. You've essentially just made a movie that says, yup, rich people can really be a problem. I guess I'll take the problem of the rich individual and make this one altruistic instead. And while Rome is a great backdrop for these ideas, it is just not remotely focused enough in how it's expressing it. There's just a bunch of quotes being tossed around from like the actual Julius Caesar to Marcus Aurelius, and it just makes it all a blur. And then just to touch on tone, it feels like a lot of it is very like Shakespearean influence, to the point that there are literal Shakespearean monologues actively being used in places I just don't want to hear them, but then tonally it's weaving between like a Shakespearean drama to a tragedy to a comedy in a way that make it just so hard to peg down what the hell is happening. Then there's just lines from things like Mildred Pierce that in combination with different shots that pay homage to silent era films, it also feels like it's making these grand statements around the progression of cinema and the things that'll push it forward and the things that'll hold it back. It literally just feels like this man amalgamated thoughts of things that he was interested in for like 30 years and then tried to put it all into one single movie. He was like, this is gonna be my masterpiece, so it's gonna have everything. I know I'm derailing a lot, but it almost feels pointless to go through the things that happened in this movie because it all just feels like these little vignettes, but I guess I will try. We will get back with Cesar, who again has permission to demolish sections of the city to start Megalopolis. At one point he stops time while it's going down, which no one else notices except the mayor's daughter, Julia Cicero, who I have enjoyed as an actress in things in the past, but in this movie she is not good. And that's an interesting distinction to make because everyone is struggling through weird dialogue and unusual tone, but she just happens to be particularly bad. Like when you're watching a Shakespeare play and there's like that one person who doesn't understand like the inflection and tone that they're supposed to be bringing to their character. She feels like that. Like there's the scene that most people have seen by now when she goes to talk to Cesar and wants to learn about what he's doing. Like his line work of, "The riches of my Emersonian mind," may be really bad, but it's her back and forth with him that feels even more stilted.
Entitles me?
Yes.
Entitles me?
Yes.
Thankfully, Adam Driver manages to bring it back and sell it with this little classic.
So go back to the club.
Clearly, no one in this movie is particularly good because of what they're saying and how they have to say it, but she just happened to stand out a little bit more as bad. Like, I am horrified by most of the things that come out of Aubrey Plaza's mouth, but upon rewatch, I at least appreciate that she understood her own ridiculous assignment as WoW Platinum.
I'm rotten, and that is the score. Let me ask you a real question, okay? What is it like being rich?
Yeah, well, everyone else has names like Cesar Caesar, Claudio, Crassus. She gets WoW Platinum as her stage name.
You're anal as hell. I, on the other hand, am oral as hell.
Who has some kind of personal relationship with Caesar that on her end seems to be more for personal gain, and she's very upset that he seems to care more about Megalopolis than her. But even though the federal government has given Caesar permission to start demolishing things to make a little subsection of Megalopolis, which is being funded by his vastly wealthy uncle Crassus, the mayor is staunchly against this development because it doesn't directly line his and other elites' pockets, and he wants to use the recently demolished location for a casino, claiming that the tax revenue could immediately help people when the intent is really just to encourage them to spend money they don't have, while Caesar remains clear in his vision of longevity.
Don't let the now destroy the forever.
Which is honestly the best line of the entire movie, and it can apply to so many different things in this world, and it makes like the center point for the debate going forward, and it's the thing that Coppola seems the most interested with. Again, it's just a mess. But this seems like a good enough time to introduce Claudio, played by Shia LaBeouf, who they just fully set free on this. He's just in his own little bubble here. He's introduced to us via rumors of him sleeping with his sisters Claudia, Claudine, and Claudette. Which, come on girls, even if that wasn't your brother, has some standards. I feel like I can smell him through the screen. But he will ultimately try to use the anger and hostility of the people against both Caesar and Cicero to gain control of his uncle Crassus's fortune. Which, while Platinum also has her sights on, very quickly ending up engaged to him when she realizes she can't get what she wants from Caesar, who is now mildly interested in Cicero's daughter because she could see him stop time, meaning something about her lives outside the scope of his control. She is actually special and not just for the club. But then we just pivot to him driving through the collapsing city to a glowing flower shop before honoring his dead wife at this ultra-realistic memorial, which is what makes the mayor's daughter realize that he didn't murder his wife. It's a lot. There's just so many different conflicting things happen. Like, it is really trying to give us like every piece of information about a person's life while not being like a slice of life movie. But up to this point, I was at least trying to be on board. But then it gets to the Colosseum scene for Crassus and Platinum's wedding reception.
The only thing bigger than Hamilton Crassus' bank account is this prick.
Where Caesar turns up wasted and will continue to drink and imbibe in drugs as he presents Grace VanderWaal as Vesta Sweetwater, described as the virginal pop star. And I do think my mouth just opened in like horror confusion for the rest of this entire scene, because she will then start descending from the ceiling on a moon in a song very reminiscent of Taylor Swift in Cats. And I actually don't know which one is more convoluted. That all these people in the audience start bidding on the Virgin while Adam Driver is in some weird kaleidoscope room just like Twitch tripping out. And this is when my brain started being like, absolutely not. I don't know what this is. I don't know what's happening. I don't like it. And I feel like there's still like an hour and a half left. But yeah, so this virgin is a callback to the Vestal Virgins of Rome, who maintain the sacred hearth and flame, which just doesn't seem like something we should be trying to call back to, even with a fictional future mimicking Rome, but okay. I do get that that's kind of the point, like we're satirizing societal attitudes and customs, but in the moment, wacky. Like while all the rich old dudes are bidding towards her virginity pledge, the Claude siblings are having an incest makeout session.
You can see right through me!
Again, it's just this weird blend of extremely in-your-face satire, but then it just derails it constantly by being an earnest mess and trying to like subtext your way in. Then there's this back and forth with Julia and Caesar that feels like a scene out of The Social Network.
Why do you pretend you're so bad?
You're not an asshole, Mark. You're just trying so hard to be.
And I'll give it the benefit. Obviously, this scene is supposed to be super chaotic. There is a lot going on and it's putting in a lot of information about this society and the direction the story is going. But holy shit, too much. In terms of the story though, this is where Claudio plans to discredit Caesar and further the animosity towards Mayor Cicero by playing a deep fake sex tape between Caesar and the Virgin Vesta. Then has people planted in the audience to immediately break out into fights and trash the mayor, who's immediately begun trashing Caesar. And honestly, this wasn't even a good deep fake. Like, it took me a second to be like, what is, oh, that's supposed to be the person who just descended from the ceiling. Okay, he defiled the Virgin. Like, these are just two completely different people. How did this work? But it does kick off Claudio's foothold to try to be this, like, populist politician, and also gave him the chance of getting some revenge against his cousin Caesar, who he hates because he's seen as more worthy of Crassus's attention and therefore bank backing. And because he seemed to have a thing for Julia, but they don't really go back to that.
Revenge tastes best while wearing a dress.
Okay, slay queen. I have no idea if like the two sides of nepotism in this is some kind of commentary on Coppola's feelings towards his own family, but whatever. Let's start taking a poll on who he thinks the useful family members are. Who wasn't in this movie? But Caesar's pretty unaware that any of this is happening because of his crazy little drug bender, but still ends up arrested for his crimes against virginity. Well, actually, it's because Vesta's supposed to be 16, but don't worry, everyone. Not only was it a doctored video, she also lied about her age and is actually 23, so no crime even if it wasn't fake. But in another moment of just tossing in more like celebrity culture weirdness that I'm sure Coppola's found himself interested in, they make sure to let us know that she has her own little Robin Daggers Jojo Siwa moment here after her identity is exposed.
My new name is Robin Daggers!
Which just feels so pointless. Like, why do we need to know about this pivot? Like, I get that it like plays into the real life occurrence of people doing these like massive identity flips as a response to things tarnishing their more innocent image or trying to break out of a more innocent image. And it's definitely like this commentary on celebrity obsession culture and how we hold people on these weird pedestals. It's also much while also just being not enough. Like, she is a top billed cast member and you could probably just remove her from the entire thing and it wouldn't make a difference. So for a very brief little moment, Cesar finds himself a little canceled. I know Coppola has a lot of thoughts on cancel culture, which is why some of the people in this movie got cast, except, you know, some of that isn't cancel culture. It was severe abuse allegations that the perpetrator admitted to and therefore hurt future work prospects. And the movie handling it as nothing and ultimately a lie really just kind of lets you know where he lands on it. So after this initial setback to Caesar's mental, he's back in his creative groove thanks to Julia, who's now his muse, his everything. He's not going to mess things up the way he did with his other wife. And just when things are starting to pick back up, we get a moment that I kind of totally forgot happened. The city gets hit by a falling satellite.
You know that satellite that's coming down over Labrador?
Yes.
Well, it's not coming down over Labrador.
Apparently it was supposed to hit Canada, but then I hope it realized that like the nukes were just too nice and went for these douche nozzles instead. And I know a lot of people were like, what was the point of that satellite? I feel like it wasn't even dealt with. There was no fallout from it, but it literally like demolishes enough buildings to like clear the way for Cesar to just continue with Megalopolis without as much pushback from the community and the mayor. Oh, I do remember why I basically forgot this happened though. The impact is immediately followed by the fifth wall break, which certainly just did not translate as well to at-home viewing. Like, petition to swap in Paddington, like that one guy that edits Paddington, into a movie every day. If Paddington had asked that question, I'd be back on board. But the main response I liked in this about the concern of being afraid of the future, after he kind of rambles about like, well, if you've ever loved or if you love now and have ever known love, there's no reason to fear. That's whatever. I get what he's going for with it, but the good part of the answer is that the idea of utopia isn't a thing or a place. It would be the freedom to have open dialogue about what is the best course for society's future. I just wish there had been more of that actually in this movie, because he just feels so disconnected from everyone as this tortured genius. And he's now more than tormented than ever by his failures and like the need to create more housing immediately and the need for change, just obsessing over the details that led to his wife's accident or self-inflicted end we will come to see, which is when Julia reveals that she's pregnant. Now there's a personal reason for him to care about his utopia, which in terms of like the literal space he's creating for the utopia currently comprises of a light up version of the moving walkways they have in airports, except you just stand on them so they're not actually moving you that much faster than you would just be walking. And these like flower petal tendril homes. So her father, who again, the mayor, his bitter rival, is very unhappy that his daughter is having a child with Cesar. Not even cool with it when he finds out that if it's a boy, it's going to be named after him.
She'll be given the name Sunny Hope. And if it's a boy, he'll be named Francis.
Well, I hope to hell it's a son. I'll take the weird self-insert naming over Sunny Hope, which apparently was also his wife's name. I can't handle any of this. But yeah, no, he is really upset about it, and she's very bothered by that.
I'm breaking his heart.
Did he tell her to deliver that like Natalie Portman in Star Wars?
Anakin, you're breaking my heart.
But it's literally bothering Frank so much that he offers to bribe Cesar to leave Julia and his child, offering up his signed confession admitting that he lied during the murder trial to try and get Cesar convicted. So if he agrees to leave Julia, he'll get this confession as an insurance policy and Cicero's unwavering support of Megalopolis. Cesar, of course, does not take him up on this. But on to the civil unrest of Claudio making moves to control the people, again making his influences very obvious by having him speak to the people while standing standing on a tree stump cut out to look like a swastika. Where I must mention, in a blink and you'll miss it moment, they reveal that Dustin Hoffman's character, who was the mayor's fixer or something, died off screen in the satellite impacts, clearing the way for Claudio to do his thing. But yeah, subtle as a brick with some of this, like his little buddy here seems to have a black sun tattooed on his forehead and will later do what seems like a very specific salute motion. Again, I understand that a lot of this is being played for satire, but the movie just has too many earnest moments that are also laugh-worthy to make it work as one, because those earnest moments also seem to completely fail at expressing their point. Also, back to the stump, I get that imagery like that was around in Roman time before it was co-opted, but why is it here now? Because they acknowledge that Nazi Germany was a thing, so that would have already happened, so why is it just casually in a park? Enough with that though, let's check back in with WoW Platinum and her mission for success. So she seemingly still wants to be with Cesar, very jealous of Julia, and is offering to get him access to all of Crassus's money if he comes back to her. Bold play, but it doesn't work. So instead she tries to back him into a corner by doing some weird manipulative hypnosis to have Crassus cut off Caesar's access to his finances in hopes that he'll have to turn to her for help if he wants to continue. But not before Claudio's little buddy here pays a kid to shoot Cesar in the head. Absolutely wild turn of events that I saw coming once that kid popped up in the middle of the night, leading to this wild scene of Megalon and various tissues being used to save him, but like his brain still has to regrow a bit, so it's just these wild moments of him like explaining how he discovered Megalon when trying to save his wife, and it's like the love he had for her and the future of society physically manifesting into a substance before he turns into a ranting, raving mess when he realizes his funds have been cut off. But he's still not down for WoW's help, whether it's because he genuinely doesn't want it or doesn't have the mental capacity to understand what's happening right now, but she ends up trying a new approach and goes at Claudio to secure her finances instead.
Do you like my outfit?
Yes.
Yes, anti-wow.
The anti-WoW stuff was apparently all Aubrey Plaza, and again, I appreciate her commitment to the tone this movie needed to maintain and having fun on the train wreck. I will say, when originally watching this, I was horrified and I hated it, and now I can laugh.
Does it make my ass look good?
Like, honestly, even with the comedic tone, this would work for me. I'm sorry. But what follows is a scene that I simply cannot show you, probably for your own benefit. I, for one, wanted to scream, "Wow, no! No, Aubrey, don't!" Also, Coppola's inspiration for the WoW name, I'm just gonna leave it on screen here. Incredible. So yeah, she hooks up with Claudio because apparently there is a prenup preventing her from getting any of Crassus's money if he dies, so she wants to perform a hostile takeover of his bank by making Claudio the more respectable, presentable person Crassus always hoped he could be. He immediately sees right through it though, dramatically.
Treacherous! Villainous!
But don't worry, apparently this dying wish to Kronos keeps him kicking just long enough to enact revenge by asking,
What do you think of this boner I got?
"I hate everything," before revealing that it is not his aforementioned prick, but a bow and arrow, which he then uses to kill WoW Platinum. A tragedy. Why would you take her from us? There's still like 15 minutes left. And then to only hit Claudio with a couple butt shots? Unfair. I gotta say though, all that was more interesting than the stuff going on with Cesar, which now includes the baby being born, them getting married, and riots escalating in the city as unrest rises. Before we just get Cesar giving his big old Megalopolis speech because I guess it's ready. Yeah, that also happens. It's just done. Talking about the concept of man, our gods, liberty, kindness, and love while cutting in imagery from history from Hitler to 9/11 wreckage. But ultimately ending on the idea that individuals have the agency to be what they want, to make their future, to debate about that future, to tear down what exists. To not let the now destroy the forever.
We're in need of a great debate about the future!
But do you really want to have that though? You didn't make time to listen to anybody, you've spoken to no one, you just believed in the power of your own genius. But whatever, Megalopolis is done and he opens the gates for the people, and that's it. Lots of cheering, all the problems solved, yippee! Crassus is leaving his fortune in the patent for Megalon to Caesar's Megalopolis, the mob turns on Claudio when they realize what he is, and Cicero's finally on board with that vision of the future, either because of genuine belief or fear of a public hanging, and finally steps on that moving walkway. Ending with Julia stopping time, but this time everyone except their baby freezes. Which I think is supposed to be really driving home the idea that the future is what matters most and everything should be in service of that, wanting what's best for future generations and not just continuing to seek wealth for wealth's sake. Before closing on this modified Pledge of Allegiance that did not work for me and was definitely supposed to be sincere, and that ties into so much of where my issues lie. If this is supposed to be functioning on two scales, the genuine, earnest hope for the future, but also calling over rich people who fall over themselves to sound smarter using the words of centuries gone rulers and philosophers that are actually full of shit while they just bicker amongst themselves to gain more success and wealth. Why is this the ending? Because I'm not instilled with any hope. I don't feel amazed for the future with this, or even the future of cinema, as many have stated the dual purpose is there. Because in every level, it's just looking for the same types of people that are already in all those aforementioned positions to suddenly become the solution. Caesar is not a compelling person. This is not a savior. This is not a compelling end to something that so clearly felt like it had so much to say. I know that when Aubrey Plaza read the script, she responded that it was like a beautiful nightmare, and she meant that in a complimentary term, which is fine. Yes, so much of this was a nightmare escape, but in a beautiful way to her. But his immediate response was, a nightmare? This movie is a love letter to humanity. This is going to give hope to society and humanity. It's not a nightmare. But I do actually think putting all the eggs in the basket of one rich person to maybe save us all with this magic substance is in fact a nightmare. And if you are trying to satirize the idea that there's this one substance, this thing that'll be discovered that can suddenly fix all of our problems, you didn't drive that home enough because you got too caught up in the idea of hope. So for me, his intention that this is a love letter, that this is supposed to be about hope, just fell very flat. Like multiple times in this movie, you have Caesar saying that the utopia is a debate amongst society about the future, people having agency in crafting that new society. So why isn't this focused more on those people? So with all that said and done, I think what this movie needed was a foil, some random ass person to walk up and say something so simple and obvious that they all feel like idiots for their actions, or that character needed to be present in the background the entire run of the movie, but instead, I'm the fucking idiot watching this thing more than once to try and give it some benefit. I even started going through earlier versions of the script to try to feel something, but it was so different that it felt pointless to do. There will be theses written about this movie, and many "you're wrong about Megalopolis" actually video essays. How in cinema, it's a movie standing alone on an island as a counter to the slop that is so often released with the idea of making the most money. People talking about how it engages with the concept of time and space and how we as humans occupy it and how we should engage with it. And of course, the inevitable renaissance of those who are legitimately 100% here for the bit. But I will not be any of those people. I maybe will be swayed to the Renaissance bit community, but I am totally fine to leave off with my thoughts that this is an overstuffed movie with too many ideas, none of which feel actualized or properly engaged with for the intended message. It's a metaphor and a fable can only get you so far. Because again, the metaphor and satire feel completely at odds with the fable. I see a lot of people say that this movie warns against the dangers of unchecked ambition and ego, but I really don't get that out of Caesar, and I don't really get that out of the movie as a whole. Even after he ends up shot, it never really feels like there's any lesson for him to learn. And maybe it's actually going one step deeper, where this was his plan all along, to just have me like contemplating all this stuff because of my general annoyance of the actual movie. You know, the first part of that might have been true. The annoyance was unintended, I'm sure. And again, if that was good for you, I am so happy. I really genuinely tried. That's why this isn't just 20 minutes of yelling. I really did try to like go into it, see what it was going for, engage with those ideas, and I still just come out on the other end being like, but I think it's a bad vision of those ideas. But yeah, I have no idea. I didn't even get to mention the weird behavior with Caesar's mom, who just snips at him while he tries to deal with it patiently until she looks proud of him at the end, which is just like making me wonder if that's like personal anecdote of his own life. I also realized that a lot of this is like a love letter to his deceased wife, but it's just, there had to be a better way to get this all into one thing. And I will say that watching this at home was a significantly less miserable experience than watching it in theaters, probably because like I knew what to expect, so I could just focus more on the ideas that were being presented versus just trying to keep up with like the rapid transition of scenes. And I do really appreciate the ideas, and I see what he was going for, and I think it's nice that there's so many different things that mean a lot to him that he was trying to bring to a very personal project. I'd never see myself being swayed on the full genius of this movie. But again, if you're one of those people that's sick, let me know down below. I hope I didn't offend anyone. The defenders of this are very staunch, which I get because the detractors of this are very staunch, and I was one of them because it was a very bad time for me originally. But yeah, let me know what you're thinking down below. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. Leave a like on the video if you're into that kind of thing. All my other social medias are listed down below if you want to follow me there. I hope you're all having a fantastic day. I am actually mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.